All right, welcome back to the Roast It Yourself podcast brought to you by Coffee Bean Corral and Current Crop Roasting Shop. I'm Stephen Burnett with Coffee Bean Corral in Jackson, Mississippi. And typically with me is Catherine Mansell, Certified Q Grader and Director of Current Crop Roasting Shop in New Orleans, Louisiana. Now, today she's not with me because today I had the opportunity, actually yesterday, I had the opportunity to interview Dave Starcevich of Copper Cup Coffee Company. Somebody who's really had an incredible story of starting a coffee roasting business from starting roasting only 4 years ago. And he's expanding. He's roasting more coffee than ever, projected to increase. And I got to sit down with him for, as you can see, about 40 minutes to just discuss what he did to get to that level. So if you've ever thought about getting into the coffee roasting business side of things, this is going to be an amazing episode for you to listen to, for you to learn from Dave, to hear his story, to apply what you can to your situation. Now, typically each week we set aside about 10 minutes. This is a long one, but about 10 minutes to field questions from home coffee roasters and professionals alike about roasting, tasting, and most importantly, enjoying coffee. For future episodes, you can send your questions to questions@riypod.com. That's questions@riypod.com to get a nice shout out from us in an upcoming episode, and of course, to get your question answered. But now, without wasting any more of your time, let's get into that interview with Dave. Dave Starcevich, man, thank you for being here.
Yeah,
this is awesome. You came all the way down here just to be on our podcast.
that's right.
The
whole flight, everything. This was
that's the whole reason, man. Well, this is the place to be, so that makes sense. No, well, thank you for coming down here, getting to see our space, meet everybody. It's always good to put a face with a name and a voice, and I'm glad we get to work with you guys. But I wanted to, I think your story is really cool. It's uncommon in the sense that a lot of people have like a dream of like, what if I could start my own coffee roastery? But they don't actually execute, or if they do, they execute at kind of at a low grade level, and they're just doing, which is nothing wrong with it if that's what you want. But some people want to know how to grow it and get it big. And I think that your story is super cool. Because how long have you been roasting coffee?
Somewhere 3.5, 4 years, somewhere in that range. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it started off as kind of ambiguous because we started roasting in our kitchen oven, just to get our heads around like what's going on, what is coffee roasting, and what, it's this weird ambiguous thing because no one ever teaches about it. It's not something that people talk about a whole lot, and it's kind of an unknown thing, really. And so when we found out about it, we just did a kind of a deep dive on what is going on here, what is this, what green beans, and so that's how it started, was just roasting in the oven and getting our heads around what is this process and what does this look like. So,
what made you want to, like, because you had to buy those coffee beans, you're like, I guess we just put them in at 450 for 15 minutes and go, right? What made you even want to go down that road? Like,
I'm just a giant nerd, and like it just caught my interest for whatever reason. So my wife is a coffee drinker, but I never really was. But she kind of got me interested in the different types of coffee because she's been to a lot of really quality coffee places, and it's like, well, what makes coffee quality over something that's not? And so that was an interesting question that caught my attention, and so I ended up tracking down some green beans through you guys, and taking them home, and then doing some research and trying something and doing more research and asking questions. It's like, I put them in the oven, I'm hearing popping. What is that? Like, now there's oils at the surface. What is that? And just repeatedly having an iteration of trying something, observing something, and then researching what's going on, and eventually just building a fundamental base of knowledge that you can build off of and then take to the next scale level, which for us was a 1 pound roaster. And then you're asking a whole different set of questions and researching down that path. And
huge upgrade from the cookie sheet.
Oh, 100%. Yeah. So when we were in the cookie sheet in the oven, obviously when you roast coffee, it creates a lot of smoke with all the chemical reactions that are going on. And so we're from Casper, Wyoming, which is really windy, and we'd have to wait for windy days, and I'd open the front door and the back door and wait for it to blow through the house so I could start roasting coffee.
Natural ventilation. I
would set off the alarms all the time, and the dog would be running around. But all in the name of science, I guess.
I tell people I got into roasting coffee because I got an espresso machine, and it was eating coffee like nobody's business. And so I was in an apartment at the time. I had my fresh roast roaster. I had a dryer vent hose running out the window. And I think my neighbors thought that I was doing something very illegal because they would like walk by. I'd be waving at them through the window, and they're just like not seeing anything.
So you haven't done exactly that. I know exactly what you're talking about. When we set up our 1 pound roaster in the garage, I had the exact dryer vent hooked up to one of the windows. So from the outside, you see this weird dryer vent sticking out of the window with smoke billowing out as you're sitting in the garage
and chaff and stuff.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
What is that smell? Yeah.
Yeah, we got a lot of strange looks during that phase in life. Yeah.
Yeah. No, but that's amazing. But like, so did you get into this? Did you start experimenting? Did you buy that first bit of coffee and the cookie sheet to start a business, or were you just interested in nerding out, kind of exploring?
Before I was just interested in nerding out and just learning something new and different and unique. It just wasn't something that I'd ever run across before, and so that's how it started there. No, but eventually what had happened is we started going to small farmers markets or events, makers markets. And my wife and I would sell coffee, both brewed and whole bean and ground.
Like hot or like cold brew?
Hot.
Okay. Yeah.
When we were doing it first, it was hot. I think we actually had a small espresso machine that we bought because it's like, well, this is interesting enough that maybe we should get an actual espresso machine. So we got one of the small rocket espresso machines.
Nice. Yeah.
Which was super great. And so we were able to take that to the markets and make espresso for people and sell coffee there. And so in that phase, we were kind of looking and going, gosh, we're actually making money from this, and you can price it reasonably and people pay for it. Like, this is interesting. And so that's how we kind of developed the idea of like, well, is this a business? Is this something worth looking at? And I think a lot of people that start in the hobby or gig industries at some point have that realization is like, oh, there's a sufficient amount of demand where maybe this warrants a little more business attention as opposed to just the hobby attention.
Yeah.
Right?
Now, did you find when you went to these makers markets and things like that, did you find competition already there? Or was there nobody else doing what you were doing?
No, it was just us. Yeah, there was nobody else really doing what we were doing.
Yeah. Now, one thing that people talk all the time, they call in, they ask me, hey, what about, I'm interested in the business aspect of this, but I live in a really small town. There's not a lot of demand for coffee. People are getting the big red tub, and scooping it into their Mr. Coffee all the time. Like, can I even do this? And so you're in a situation where there's not a lot of competition. There's not a lot of specialty, if any, right?
Right.
Like, what do you say to people that are in that same kind of boat?
Well, I definitely ran the numbers before we jumped and started going. And so in our town where we're 40, 50, 55,000 people, you're able to get a pretty good estimate of how many people on average are drinking coffee, first of all. So roughly 60%.
Yeah.
And then you can kind of whittle down your market to better understand like what the demand might be or where you might have a niche. And that's going to give you kind of a bar as like, is this going to work? Is it not? Is there some sufficient threshold of population around you? It's like probably. But you would definitely be worth running the numbers to figure that out. And in our case, like the value was sufficient. It was like, there's enough opportunity here, both in a well done coffee shop that you can compete with other places and take market share, and people at home who are looking for better quality stuff. And so it's like, I think we have some serious competitive advantages to take a good amount of market share away and have a successful business.
How did you approach that side of running those numbers with people that are drinking out of the big red tub or the big blue tub, but they could be converted to like good coffee? How did you run that? How did you estimate the percentage of people that you could actually turn into like specialty coffee drinkers?
Well, that's an interesting analysis. So a lot of places are kind of ahead of the curve from Wyoming in that, especially along the coast and in Denver and all that. So they've already gone through that phase. And so I was able to just look at some of the places that have gone through that evolution already and go, okay, that conversion happens at some rate at some point in a town's, pathway forward. And so I know it exists. It's just a lot of it comes down to knowledge and awareness. Like there's a big amount of people who just aren't aware that there's better coffee, who don't know that they can actually improve the quality of something that they do every single day. Religiously.
Multiple times a day.
It's part of their daily habit, and like a lot of it is just they don't know about it yet. And so when you present yourself to the community and you're able to do it in a way that is accessible for people, they can come in and ask questions, and you can convert people at a pretty ready rate. And so now you're not competing for market share with competition anymore. You're actually growing the overall pie of the coffee business in your town.
Yeah, and that's what we're all about. I mean, we're heavy on education. We're heavy on getting people like you into roasting coffee, people that never have tried it before. So like we can all fight over the pie of people who want to roast, or the pie of specialty coffee drinkers, or we can increase the size of that pie and everybody gets better off for it.
Yeah.
And I think that's a really great strategy. Now, obviously, being in a small town, being local, like, do you think, what percentage do you think, if you had to assign it, were people interested in you, especially in the beginning, because you were local versus because you were a specialty? Like, how did that break down for you?
Well, so when we started our markets, we actually had developed a decent sized pool of people that were interested in us, and so they were ordering from us from time to time, and we would make beans of kind of like that gig style economy, right?
Gotcha.
And so when we built our brick and mortar shop, we did so in a way that we knew that we could scale up to a certain point to be profitable.
Yeah.
And we knew that we could get there. And so when we opened, we had a small base of customers already set up that we could at least like get people through the door. And we knew that we had spent a lot of time on developing the quality of the product on the front end. We spent a lot of time developing, our recipes and making sure that things when we opened were going to be very quality. So we put a lot of attention on product and product quality. We put a lot of attention on service and customer service. And where my wife really excelled, especially from the beginning and having that end goal in mind, she put a lot of effort into our social media. The Instagram, the Facebook, and that type of thing. And she really developed a nice cohesive page that people were attracted to. And so she continues to grow on the social media front of things to a point now where she's got a really serious following of people who are just interested in what, the posts that she's making and the education she releases and the pictures, and everything's really cohesive and really high quality and well done. And so people get a sense of our quality just through like that look into her social media sphere.
Yeah.
And so that was key into us growing it. But, we didn't really spend any money on marketing. Our intention was to develop the product in the community that would spread through word of mouth. And we knew that that was going to have some slow ramp up rate in the beginning, but the way, that network effect really takes hold after that first year. And that's where the real growth starts occurring when you're looking into word of mouth. So we knew that it would take a little bit of time to go from a small audience in the beginning, but we were able to put a lot of emphasis on quality and service and develop our work flow and our customer service expectations. And so that was able to drive our growth quickly after that network effect really kicked in.
Yeah. And I mean, to me, the social media side of things is so much about story.
Yeah.
It's about, who are the people behind this thing?
Yes. And authenticity.
Yeah.
I think that's what sets a lot of like the really successful people apart from most other stuff is the authenticity piece. Yeah. People latch onto that, and that's what they're after for online. And
we can overcomplicate that in a big way. We can try and make everything perfect and polished, and in reality, you kind of lose out on some of the authenticity in that, or at least the perceived authenticity, right? We got a lot of people that are roasting coffee, and they just want to be behind the roaster and leave me alone, And I get that. I totally get that. Like, I just want to do my thing and just y'all buy it. But if you have a way of sharing your story or sharing kind of behind the scenes, sharing what you're doing and why you're doing it, it makes all the difference in the world on that marketing side, especially the free marketing.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. Well, and that's part of it too. Like coffee has forever been a social thing.
Yeah.
And so that's what we were really focused on when we went from, we have a product to now we have a business. Is it's not just the business of coffee. We're in the business of building community. We're in the business of building culture. And so we put a lot of emphasis on customer service and interacting with every customer that walks through the door, building relationships with people, asking people about what they're up to, what's going on, and really, really leaning into the customer service and the culture and community that comes through the doors.
Yeah.
That's what really set us apart as a business.
Yeah.
So we have a quality product, we have a quality service, and we're becoming like a cultural hub where people can gather, people can meet and build relationships with one another.
There are so few of those in existence anymore, cultural hubs like that. People spend all their time on the internet listening to podcasts. How dare you? And they don't spend time like actually rubbing elbows with other people and rubbing shoulders with other people. And I think creating an environment where that can actually happen, is great. You were telling me about like you got a kids section, you got a place for like moms to come bring their kids, families to come show up. You got a place for people that are doing business to come and sit down and talk to each other, and just the network effect of that, but the fact that you're creating a space where people go to see other people.
Yes, 100%.
Which is, I think that's the dream. That's incredible.
Yeah, we get a lot of diversity of people that come through. It's fantastic because like you're saying, you have a whole section of people that are there. Moms are together with their kids, and that's great. Kids are playing with one another, and and that's fantastic. And over here, people are networking and sharing business ideas, or meeting future clients, and so you have transactions taking place over here. And yeah, there's just a lot of different ways that people move forward in life and are productive when they're around each other. And I think that's really important, is having spaces where people can be together. Those are getting harder to find. So I'm happy that we're able to provide that.
Yeah. Roughly, just so people get an idea, like roughly how many pounds of coffee are you going through with your shops and selling to other places? How much are you going through in like a week?
A week? Oh, just gosh. Roughly 100 to 200 pounds a week is my guess.
Yeah. It's incredible. Yeah. And so you didn't come into this, besides the cookie sheet, you didn't come into this with coffee experience. You didn't come into this from an industry standpoint. So like what skills and abilities do you think that made you successful in this?
Well, the advantage I had going into it was I have an engineering background, and so that's always helpful when you're talking about, things of a technical nature. I've worked at power plants, I've worked at refineries, I've done chemical consulting and sales for refineries, and so having the background base of knowledge and the ability to learn quickly was an advantage. But then it's just a function of interest and putting in the time and the work, and being as smart is like helps you speed things along, but it's still a function of doing the work. So that was an advantage I had going in that was very helpful. And when you operate at a power plant scale or a refinery scale, it's like you get a better understanding of how big things can get, and what it takes to be like very successful in a business. And so bringing that in and going, okay, I know I have to get to a certain point to be successful. It's like I can't take a half step here and expect to be successful. This is the minimum threshold that I need to get to, and from there we can go forward. And so having that kind of sense built in as like my background was super helpful.
Speaking for myself, I think people have the false sense of I want to be very stable at every step along the way. So you think defensively, right? And you're not thinking where do I want to be with this in 2 to 3 years. And if you don't do that, you're not going to take the risk necessary to get to that level. I think a lot of people get hung up there. But also, I've noticed just in talking with you the last couple of days, and even in this interview, your numbers. Like your numbers. You've done the research. You did the market research. You know how much how the coffee's flowing. You know all that stuff, and you've taken the time to really get to know the business, open the hood on it, right?
Oh yeah, that's the world I live in. Like when I say that I'm a nerd, that's absolutely true. Like the numbers, I live in the numbers on everything, and part of the thing that I think people associate with risk is not knowing those numbers, or not diving into the evaluations enough to understand the numbers sufficiently. You can eliminate a lot of the risk in taking that jump by just spending the time to understand and really, get a full grasp on the situation that you're in. I know a lot of people talk about risk in starting businesses, but a lot of times the risk is like not leaning into the business, really giving it the
lost opportunity.
Yeah.
No, that makes a lot of sense. And I mean, to me, when you talk about like that defensive thinking, you wind up if this never becomes the thing that you want it to be, then you've lost. So what are you worried about? And that being said, you can have all the plans in the world, but like, what's that? Who's the boxer that said everyone's got a plan until they get punched in the mouth? Right?
Mike Tyson, I believe. Hopefully, I'm right there.
I think that's right. It sounds right to me. I don't know, but so that being said, how have you gotten punched in the mouth? What's been your biggest pivot?
Underestimating the rate of growth, and I always knew that was going to be a thing, but you never can really guess it. Like when you're growing, you're kind of able to sustain for a while, but then you get like these little inflection points where the acceleration of growth changes, and there's a number of problems that come along with that you kind of know are coming, but you don't quite know when. And so one of the things that happens is when you hit one of those inflection points and your rate of growth starts to take off, is like you have to have some capital ready to go to just keep up with your growth rate. And so what a lot of people really underestimate from a cash flow standpoint is, I have money coming in and this is good, but all that money that I bring in now has to go towards growing the next month. And so it's just keeping up with that cash flow on a growth rate that's now accelerating. And so that's something that can catch you off guard. And luckily we've been able to kind of keep up with it. But it is something that I think can catch you off guard really easily. And like
we plan for failure, we don't plan for success.
And a lot of places fail that way. Like they get overloaded with demand that they can't cope with. And so like we have been really diligent in coming up with that workflows that are efficient so that we can maximize the utility out of the people that we have there, the equipment we have there, and the space that we have. And so when those situation happens where we get a big ramp in growth, it's like we can now move our systems up and just make them bigger and bolster them and scale them, efficiently, with assuming that we have the capital to do so. And so that's it. And then that's great because now you're able to take that to your lenders or your investors or whoever and go like, listen, here's the growth rate that we're on. We're looking for investment to keep up with the growth that we already have. Like the business is already in place. We just need to get to this next step up to prepare for the next month's growth. And so it really helps having all that lined out so that when you are growing, there's going to come a point where you're going to have to ask for money and you have to be able to tell that story. It's like, here's our inflection point. The business is there. If we don't do this, we're going to fail. Like this, like it's not the risk of not doing it. It's the risk of not keeping up.
No. So, that's it's like the myth of like, we'll just flatline here.
Yeah.
Like, no. You're going to go down, You
do go down. Yeah. You can't stop. Yeah. I know that's one of the lines that I really like is, life is like a treadmill and you have to run as fast as you can just to stay in the same place.
That's right.
Like you really have to be pushing the innovation. You have to be pushing for people's attention because in business, you're not just competing for people's attention on coffee, like your specific product, like you're competing with everybody else for people's attention. And like, you really have to put yourself out there and do something special and be relevant. And it's like I said, you have to run as fast as you can all the time just to be relevant.
My kid just turned 2 and we got him a little balance bike, no pedals or anything. And he goes down the hill in our driveway and there was a moment where it was going faster than he expects. His feet were off the ground. It's going faster than he expects. And he kind of freaks out and starts throwing his feet down to try and stop, which of course, if he had just let it go, it would have slowed down a little more naturally going back up the hill. But he threw the brakes on and then went head over heels, And that's what we do. If we're not ready for that growth, if we're not prepared for that, we crash and burn a little bit. But that's something I think that, and we joke about this a lot. A lot of people start these roasting businesses by accident.
I can
because
see that.
They've been sharing the coffee with their friends, and all of a sudden, I tell people, my mom, hey, I'm out of coffee. And I'm like, well, it's kind of my unofficial job to keep her in coffee now because I roast it, right? But you can wind up in that situation where you're running this nonprofit, and you're kind of building the business backwards. Like, I see the demand. How do I do this? And then sometimes if you don't have a plan, if you don't have like, here's the next step, here's the next phase, then you can spend all your money on getting the bags just right, or you can spend all your money on the website, all your time on that. And I was like, so there's things that vie for our attention in the business side of things. Like, what do you think has been a waste of time or a waste of resources for you that you guys have like, ooh, I wish we had done that a little differently. I wish we had backed off of that.
So one of the sacrifices that we had to make in going from hobby and gig scale stuff and roasting to where we are now is when you're able to do a small batch, a pound at a time, say 20 minutes to roast a batch, and you can make small adjustments and you can roast 10 different batches pretty quickly and have a data set there that you can now taste, cup, and assess each one of those roasts and go, okay, this one's the better one, and now I can tweak that with 3 more roasts. And so you're able to go through an iterative process with 1 pound really quickly and your time. So you could spend 5-6 hours doing that process. And in the front end, it makes sense to do. Like I said, we've been through that. We have a cool picture where I have 1 coffee bean that I've roasted 20 different ways laid out on the counter, and we're tasting each one of them and writing notes on what's different between all these 20 things. Like, what impact does roasting have on all these different stuff? And that's important to do in the beginning because you're building a knowledge base of what does roasting do to the coffee and how does it affect the way it tastes on the back end and how does it affect the quality? And if I put in a different bean, it's going to do different stuff. And how does that react? And so all the while you're building a whole mental model on what roasting does to coffee, how coffee
at this stage, at that stage.
So you can invest a lot of time and resources on a small scale doing that. When you make the jump to a 20-pound batch, now you're talking about serious money. Now you're talking about serious time. And so that time and resource investment that you're making here, you can no longer do 13 batches of the same coffee. Okay, so the reason that you invest the time on the small scale is now that you've built a mental model, you kind of know how coffee behaves in a roaster, and you kind of have a general idea of what you're after in that coffee and how to roast it to get there. So now that you're at the big scale, you can kind of shoot for 85 and 90% good and be happy with that.
Yeah.
Chasing the final 10% of quality is never worth it.
Much. Yeah,
it's not worth it. It's not worth the time and the price of beans, and it's not worth your time.
Yeah.
Like, your job at that point is to get that coffee out the door.
Yeah.
You need to get it packaged, and you need to get it on the shelf for your customers. Because the truth of the matter is, your customers are not chasing the final 10%, most of them.
Yeah.
That's only something that you're probably going to be able to perceive, on a very set scale.
Yeah.
And the truth of the matter is like 80 to 90% good coffee, the way most people extract it at home without all the different variables that take place there, are never going to get the 90%
tap water,
that you
Mr.
want.
Coffee.
Exactly. It's like you're not in control of all the variables it takes to brew it, so you can't obsess over the last 10 to 15% of the quality of a cup of coffee.
Right.
And so letting go of that reign a little bit is tough for a lot of gig and craftspeople.
Yeah.
But you have to.
Yeah.
It's that law of diminishing returns. It's like, you're never going to get the return on investing in perfecting this craft. You can get really, really good that stands out above everybody else, and you need to call that sufficient.
Yes. Well, and the other side of that too is, even if you said, no, I want to chase that. I want to chase that to get to 95 or 100 on this coffee. Okay, next crop year,
everything changes. Start over.
Yeah.
Like that, and that's a great point. Batch to batch changes. The environment that you're roasting in day to day changes. And all these have little minute changes in what goes on. And when you have a small scale, and you can understand that, and it's important to know what's going on when those changes happen, but you're never going to be able to account for the variables that take place from growing to processing to shipping to storage to roasting and delivery on the back end. There's just too many variables, and so it's
even at our scale. So we don't produce any roasted coffee for sale. We do a lot of roasting on our home units up here. We've got a 1.2 kilo downstairs. Because we sell these units, we want to be good at them, and we want to keep quality control of our coffee. But even so, like, we have our videos up teaching people how to roast on each of these machines. Very helpful. But every now and then you'll get a comment to the effect of like, you can't just put the coffee in and get it the same result every time with every coffee. And I want to say, I know that. But where the whole point of this is to get people to have drinkable, good coffee out of the gate.
Well, I actually will turn it around. I actually view it as a benefit, not a defect. One of the ways that I relate to coffee, one of the things I relate coffee to when I talk to people is wine. And how wine has different vintages and different qualities from year to year and season to season, depending on what's going on in the environment that particular season. And you can get a lot of that in coffee too, or you may have a bad year in this region. You could have an exceptional year in this region over here. And some of that nuance, I think, adds a lot of fun and intrigue for me. And I think if you're able to explain that to people in the way that it's a positive thing, like, you want a little variety from year to year. It's like, you don't want the same exact thing year after year after year. It's like, you kind of want a little things to change and some nuance. And, it kind of,
and whether you want it or not, it's going to happen.
Yeah, for sure. But it helps because you get to experience something it gives you context to understand, like, when you get a really good coffee, where you've got a coffee that just hit at every level of the process, and now you have a good cup. It's like, wow, that was really good. And it's special. And the next one may not be quite that, but then you get context around what a good cup is.
Yes. And then you get to appreciate it more when it comes in. Like when we have coffees that I'm excited about trying that are new crop year. And I'm excited because I'm like, oh man, if that coffee could be what it was 4 years ago, 5 years ago, I'm just gonna hoard it myself. Honestly, you guys can't have it. I'm taking it.
I know we're such nerds too, because me and my wife and a couple of our coffee friends, like, there's a few coffees that we talk about them exactly like that. It's like, do you remember 3 years ago that Duarte coffee that we had, and how much it tasted like this, but now it's kind of different. It's still really good, but it's changed over here now. It's so
you have to let the coffee be what it is now, and not just like live in the past all the time. But it is a real thing. And I think coffee just doesn't hold up and last like wine does. You can have wine from 20 years ago, and it's like, oh, that's great. We can't capture coffee from 5 years ago. It's old and not good anymore, right? So we gotta it's kind of like riding a wave. You gotta just enjoy what you got, So you told us about your business, you told us where you come from. Like, where are you guys going? Tell me about Copper Cup in 2025, 2026.
Right. So our roadmap looks like this. So we found a winning recipe at the brick and mortar level. And so what we want to do is lean into that and invest money into making that bigger and more efficient. So we're going to be building a new shop where we've got a more efficient use of space for our customers. They're able to spread out and have more a comfortable room. So right now we're getting a little bit crowded at the peak hours. We need more storage and space in our roastery to grow. We need more living space for us and our family in the back because we're fully invested. Cool. We live at the coffee shop. So the new building that we're looking at is going to be the same setup that we have now, but it's going to be a better use of space and have more space to really lean into bringing people in and having that network effect take place with the community. So that's our first thing. And then from there, we're branching out in different directions to strengthen our business as well. So we're working with large sporting events, cafes, restaurants, golf courses, hotels. We're leading into places that are looking for ways to improve on their customer relations and their customer experience. Yeah. And so they're using us as a way to improve the customer experience for their brand. And so we're helping them with that. We step in and we try to provide some degree of coffee consulting for people where we have a lot of expertise in the coffee world that maybe not a lot of people have, but they can come to us and ask questions and we can guide them through, certain things that seem like minute details, but when done properly, really improve the quality that they give their customers. And so that's been great. So we're going to be leaning in more into the wholesale world. We're going to be leaning more into the online sales world as well. And so, we're going a couple different directions, but our main focus now is just leaning into the winning recipe that we've got on the ground in the community and then branching off from there, off of that center as a home base.
And honestly, I feel like people think that the brick and mortar model doesn't work or it's got too much overhead or it's too complicated. You found success in that world that you can't, because you're not competing with every single coffee supplier online. Right. But now that you've built that base and you've got your community and you've got all that going, now you can spread out and do other things, which is I think it's backwards from the way we're kind of sold it business now. Yes. Everything's online. Everything's a Shopify store. Everything's that. Yeah.
Well, and you mentioned exactly why that is kind of a problem is if you're a young person, like a young business, and you want to get out there and make a name for yourself, like you want to go where there is as little competition as possible and really hone your skills in that environment, which oftentimes is in smaller communities. It's in places where you're going to stand out just by the nature of you're there and available. And that's a good thing. Like if you jump into a business and your thing is like, well, I want to go online, you're not just competing with the US, you're competing with the entire world and people's attention. It's like, good luck. Like your goal as a business person is to not just outcompete people, but basically remove competition from your sphere. And if you can do that by having a local community style business first and really develop your craft in that environment, now if you want to take the next step to compete with the online world, at least you're in a better position to do so. Like they've got to head up, like the successful places on the internet have already been there for years and years. Like you're not going to outcompete them. You're going to have to really invest a lot of time and energy and money. Like that's the big piece. A lot of the online sales is just money driven, like money in to get money out kind of thing. And unless you have that capital supply ready to go, you're just not going to win that game right away.
And I think you guys are very well set up to do just that, to go into that sphere. One of the reasons is, and this is the last thing I want to ask you about, I think it's super unique what you guys do, the way you think about naming your coffees. I think is really unique, and it helps bridge a gap for people who aren't specialty coffee like snobs, but to be able to appreciate tasting it. So if you talk about that strategy, I love this. Talk about that.
So when we were talking about how to name coffees and like, you're going to present this on a shelf. What do you want the customer to know about this coffee? And in an ideal world, a customer looks at it with their eyes. The first thing that they need to know is the most important information. Well, in coffee's case, the most important information is, well, what am I looking for as a taste profile? And so when we name our coffees, we kind of lean into the alliteration on stuff. So Copper Cup Coffee Company, and our naming is kind of the same, where we have Lively Lemon and Miss Molasses. And so we kind of lean into the alliteration piece, which is cool. But the piece that we put into is, what should I taste in the coffee? Like, what's the pronounced unique flavor that comes out here? So like Lively Lemon, for example, is like, it's in the name. It's like, what you're going to taste is like, you're looking for something lemon, like sweet lemon. It's going to be bright. You already know kind of what it is. Whereas like a lot of places that do the specialty coffee are kind of overcomplicated of, it was grown at this altitude and it's this processing thing. Nobody knows. Nobody, like very few people care. It's like, what's it taste like? And like, how's it, like they have on how's it roasted and this and that. Is like, one of my pet peeves is like, well, I want a dark roast, I want a medium roast. It's like, that doesn't narrow down coffee very well at all, actually. It's like, I know you think it does, but
yeah.
So what we wanted to lean into was the tasting notes. What are you looking for in a flavor profile? Do you want to taste something different on a berry? Like, do you want berries? Do you want citrus? Do you want developed sugars, chocolate, nutty, earthy? Like, what dimension about coffee are you looking for? And then we can go from there, because you can find different roasts, different coffees that check what you're looking for.
Yeah.
But it has nothing. Like, it's like the altitude does very little for most people.
Yeah.
In fact, the altitude does almost nothing for the tasting person. That's more for the roaster to determine the density and how it's going to take on heat and stuff like that. But that information just isn't relevant. And so for us, the relevant information is, you know, what does it taste like, and is that a cool name that kind of piques my interest?
Yes. Yeah. Like, well, I mean, as like just from the marketing angle, that makes just so much sense, and it's wild that people aren't doing that, because you go to most specialty shops, they've got Ethiopia Yirgacheffe.
Right.
Almost nobody can pronounce. It's not already specialty can pronounce Yirgacheffe anyway.
Right.
And we
not to mention how many different flavor profiles of it's a varietal. It's like, how many different flavors can you get from that?
Right.
Infinite.
So many.
What am I tasting? Tell me.
And it gets people. But now you flipped it to where the fine print on those bags is the headline.
Yes.
And the headline is like, oh, what is this? Oh, this is an Ethiopian coffee, or a blend of Ethiopian and Colombian, or whatever. Oh, I like this. Now I can look for other coffees like that. You know. So you've just flipped it and made it so much more approachable for like regular people to get into specialty.
Right. Yeah, one of my favorite is Berry Bomb. Like, there's you don't have to do any guessing. You know what you're getting. It's like, there you go.
Well, and it starts a conversation off the gate.
Yeah.
Because people think coffee is coffee is coffee is coffee. You're like, what do you mean berry? What do you mean lemony? What do you mean like? And now you've already opened that door right out of the gate.
Right.
Man, Dave, I appreciate this so much. This has been really useful. I think our listeners and viewers are going to get a lot out of this. Thank you so much for sharing.
Yeah.
And obviously for coming all the way down here.
No, thanks for having me. This has been great. I appreciate all you guys. Yeah.
And we'll put your website in the show notes so people can see that, see what you guys do. Check out the art you guys put on the coffees as well. So super cool. But anyway, man, thank you so much.
Yeah, you bet.
Y'all have a great one. All right, dear listeners, I hope you enjoyed that episode, and I hope you'll let Dave know in the comments on YouTube or in the podcast comments as well, what you thought of the episode, what you thought of the wisdom that he had to offer, the advice that he had, his story, which I think is just an incredible one, and the way he talks about coffee. I just think it's all very refreshing. So, you know, let him know what you thought of what he said and his business and all of that in the comments section. And of course, be sure to check out their website, coppercupcoffeeco.com. And yeah, check that out. We've got a link in the show notes as well. We hope you enjoyed this episode as much as we enjoyed making it. If you did, please leave us a rating and review on the platform of your choice, whether that's YouTube with a thumbs up, or Apple with 5 stars. However you do it, just let us know if you liked it, or if you didn't like it. Still give us the 5 stars, even if you didn't like it. Just be nice, be a good person. But anyway, we're excited to watch the Roast It Yourself podcast continue to grow and reach more and more people. Which is exactly what we hope this interview with Dave is going to do, introduce more people to the business side of coffee roasting, even in those small towns and small communities, how that can be successful. And we couldn't do this without the folks who handle our audio, video, and graphic work to make us look good and sound good. You guys, thank you so much for what you do for us. Additionally, our coworkers give us the time and space to have these discussions. It's amazing. It's amazing that we get to do this, and so we're really appreciative of that. Remember to send any questions you may have about coffee roasting, tasting, or enjoying, about coffee in general, to questions@riypod.com. Otherwise, have a great day and happy roasting.